Slowhands Rock Talk Show.
That's fine. But Chris, thank you so much for making a little bit of time out of your day to come on and speak to myself about all things music. As I said, we'll talk about your career, we'll talk about music, we'll get your thoughts on all things music. But before we get started, how are you actually doing today?
Pretty good. I'm trying to book some flights for the States, actually. So,
right,
yeah, I'm in the middle of that as well.
All that good fun stuff when you're an international rock star.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Chris, what I like to do is I go back to the very beginning with all the guests. So where originally are you from? Where were you brought up?
South Wales, Pontypridd.
Today's episode is sponsored by Drumport. Drumport are known as a distributor for high-quality musical instruments, including their innovative Stomp Tech product line. A must-have for all musicians looking to expand their sound whilst keeping full control of it. I have mine here. Make sure you check out Drumport at www.drumport.de and get your own today. Now back to the video. And were you exposed to music from a very young age? And if so, where did that come from?
My father was a singer, but he didn't sing at home. He sang in clubs, working men's clubs.
Right, okay.
Singer and tap dancer.
Right, okay, that's fine. So then, growing up then, what age were you when you discovered your own musical taste? And who were some of the bands that you discovered for yourself?
Well, when I grew up, it was 1950s, don't forget.
Right.
There was no rock and roll anywhere to be had. It was all, if you heard anything, it'd be Pat Boone or stuff like that, So there was no rock music at all. Then when I got a little bit older, I found Radio Luxembourg as well as everybody else, like the Beatles and the Stones all listened to Radio Luxembourg, because it was the only place where you could hear pop music, and it was pop music in those days.
Yeah. And who were some of the early sort of bands or artists that you quite liked?
I remember liking Sandy Nelson, Let There Be Drums,
right.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. Obviously, casting your mind back, what was the first professional concert that you ever attended?
It would have been when I was about 11, I expect. I can't remember, 12, 13, somewhere around there, maybe 14. And there was a ballroom in Pontypridd where I grew up, in South Wales, which is called the Regent Ballroom. And sometimes they had professional bands in now and again. But that didn't happen until I was like 14, 15, something like that.
Right.
But before then, it was Radio Luxembourg. I'm playing on biscuit tins with a couple of knives.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's funny because I was brought up, I was born in the very start of the 80s, was brought up, but I was still brought up in a time where the internet didn't exist. So that the internet did not exist until I was like 19. So I'd already went through my teen years and that. But I sometimes get jealous of young people nowadays because from the comfort of your phone in your pocket, you've got access to unlimited music from all over the world. It must be amazing, and it must be weird to grow up in a time where you've never wanted anything. With regard to when I was younger, you had to go to the music shop and you had to buy an album if you wanted to hear the music, or you would maybe get a copy from your friend. But nowadays, you don't even buy music. People just go on and they just listen to it, and there's something nice about that. Maybe not so much from an artist's point of view, but from somebody discovering music, it must be quite amazing.
Yes, I often think of that. I didn't even have TV until I was 11 years old.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you, Chris, obviously you play the drums. What age did you pick up the sticks? And why was it the drums? Why was it not the bass guitar or the electric guitar or singing? Why was it the drums?
My brother, Danny, my older brother, Danny, was a marching drummer in a marching band, bugles and drums.
Yeah.
And he taught me a few things on drums. So from then on, I was hooked. I was about 10 years old. From then on, I was hooked on drums.
Who was some of your early influences? Who were some of the drummers that you looked up to?
I went to jazz because there were no drummers of any note in pop music.
Right.
So I went to jazz because they were better drummers, like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, people like that.
Yeah.
And Buddy Rich being my favorite. And a lot of drummers, not just me, a hell of a lot of drummers were influenced by him.
Yeah.
And you just sort of developed, and my father arranged me to buy. I was about 12. I was a butcher's delivery boy, so I was earning a little bit of money, and I put it all into buying this drum kit, which cost £12 when I bought it first, which in those days was about 100 quid, I expect.
Yeah, still a lot.
Yeah. And I had that, and I started playing that. No toms, just a bass drum, a crappy little cymbal, and a snare drum.
But that's all you needed, though, to get started.
Yeah. And, I didn't even know what tom-toms were called, all those things that go boom, boom.
Yeah.
So, it's difficult to start even.
Yeah.
And, of course, you don't go to football games or rugby games because you're always practicing.
Yeah. But I've looked at your career, and obviously a lot of people recognise you from AC/DC, the stuff that you've done with them, but you've played with so many great people over the years. I took a wee kind of quick note. So you've got Gary Newman, Tom Jones, Manfred Mann, David Gilmour, Gary Moore. Before we talk about AC/DC, there's another band I'm interested in. You played in the Firm.
Yep.
The Firm had Paul Rodgers on vocals, it had Jimmy Page on guitar, and it had Tony Franklin on bass.
Yep.
That is an amazing setup for a band. What is your memories of getting that band together?
Well, I didn't get it together. I got a phone call from Pagey, and he said, me and Paul Rodgers are thinking of putting a band together.
Yeah.
And we'd like you to be the drummer. And I said, oh, really? Wow. But anyway, that's a longer story than that. But
that in itself sounds like quite a compliment that Jimmy Page phones you up because he's starting a band with Paul Rodgers and he wants you to be the backbone of the band.
Absolutely. I was staggered.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I mean,
especially as John Bonham had passed on now. And, I was the first drummer Pagey used after that.
Yeah. And another person that you toured with was Gary Moore. I got to see Gary Moore in concert. It would have been maybe 99, 2000 at the Barrowlands in Glasgow. And, he was outstanding. He was absolutely brilliant. What's your memories of touring with Gary Moore?
Well, he was brilliant. I knew him before. Me and my wife used to go and have drinks with him and his wife, or girlfriend, I'm not quite sure which.
Yep.
And we used to meet up, have a pint, and he seemed quite a nice guy. So, but then I don't think he remembered those times when it came to getting me to play drums, because I replaced Cozy Powell when Cozy walked out.
Yeah.
And somebody suggested to Gary that he uses me, and I was available. There was a Japanese tour, I think, certainly a tour starting in 4 days. So I had to learn the whole set in 4 days. And I mean learn. Gary didn't want just playing drums. He wanted exactly like the record, with cymbal chips, hi-hat chips, everything,
Yeah.
Exactly where they're supposed to be, and absolutely copy to the nth degree what Cozy Powell had played on the album.
How do you do that as a drummer? Do you just simply listen, or do you create charts? How do you go about doing that?
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, to be honest.
Yeah.
You sort of start. You can. I don't read or write music, but I write my own music.
Yep.
So I use that to start a chart. You've got to, when you've got to learn 20 songs in one go, you've got to have charts of some kind, at least with the title on the top. Or he can't in, you can't in, things like that.
Yeah.
Do whatever you can to cram it into your brain. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done professionally, was learn that set in 4 hours.
Yeah, wow. But
4 days, I'm sorry.
November 1989, after the Gary Moore tour, you're asked to join AC/DC. So what is your memories of getting that offer through?
Well, AC/DC and Gary had the same manager,
right?
A guy called Stuart Young, no relation to Angus and Mal, just the name. And so I got a chance through him to have an audition with AC/DC. Which was incredible in itself. And so I had to wait for months because they were in Australia, I think. Right. And one of their brothers, I believe, had died at that point, sadly. So they put it back about 4 or 6 months. Right. So I had to wait all that time, and the manager stressed to me, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Pain of death or whatever. So I couldn't tell. I couldn't even tell my children. I couldn't even tell my best friend, who was a drummer and a huge AC/DC freak.
Yeah,
I couldn't even tell him. So we went for a pint, and I just couldn't tell him.
Do you remember for the audition?
He didn't like it very much. I just kept saying, I got something going on. I can't tell you what it is.
It must have been a nice surprise when you could tell him, though.
Yes.
Yeah. But did
Big surprise. He would have gone for it himself, had he?
Did you have to just learn a few songs? What was the audition process?
It was just north of Brighton, which was about an hour from my house at that time.
Yep.
And I remember driving there and met Dick Jones, the drum tech, who's been with them forever, still with them.
Yep.
And no pressure, but set the kit up fine, where I was supposed to, where I was told to.
Yep.
And Angus and Malcolm put 2 chairs 10 feet from my bass drum, and they sat down with their guitars, and no pressure, of course.
Yeah.
And Cliff was in one corner and Brian was in the other corner. And I think Malcolm said, okay, we'll do Back in Black. Right, says me. He says, you count in to me.
Yep.
So I got to go click, no pressure. And I go click, 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 gang. And it was like, I knew I was off then.
Yeah.
And it was just, I'd been professional for quite a few years by then.
Yeah.
So I was used to doing big gigs and having pressure and all the rest of it. Of course, they sat 10 feet from me to see if I was going to crumble.
Yeah.
Which I didn't, thankfully. So we played for half an hour, 40 minutes, I can't remember. And the outcome was, well, they said, okay, we'll let you know. What I didn't know was they had tried out 100 drummers before me. Dick told me this because he arranged them all, because he's a drummer himself. So they'd had 100 people. I was number 100.
Right, okay.
And I didn't know any of this, of course.
So it sounds like they saved the best till last.
I tell you, there's some amazing drummers in that audition.
Yeah.
Because drummers used to ring up and say, hey, don't tell my band, but I'd really like to try out with you guys. This is true.
Yeah.
And they were top people. I'm not going to say who, but they were top people.
Yeah.
Really top names.
Yeah.
And I know there were a few just the day before me who were big names in the drumming world. And I thought I did really badly, actually, on the audition.
All right, okay.
And I was kicking myself, driving home in the car. And I was so intent on berating myself, yeah. I got lost. And I was an hour from my house. So I thought, I better let the missus know. So I had to look for a phone box in those days. No mobile phones.
But the rest of the band must have seen something in your playing and also probably in your personality that they thought to themselves, this is the man that we want in the band.
I suppose so, thankfully, yes.
Yeah, and I know that you went on to record 1990s The Razor's Edge, which was a huge album for the band, but when you look at that album, arguably it's got one of the most famous songs in rock history, Thunderstruck.
Yep.
Is on the album. It's been used at I don't know how many sporting events, movie trailers. I mean, it's more popular today than it's ever been. It's still constantly played every year, and you were part of that. For that specific song, what do you remember about the writing of it? How did that song come together?
Angus and Mal had done a demo, which they always do, actually.
Was it just guitars on the demo?
No, they played drums, both of them.
Right, okay.
Or Malcolm played drums, but nevertheless.
Yep.
And they put the bass on. And, it was... and the vocals, near enough. Malcolm usually sounds down there somewhere for Brian to pick up on.
Yep.
So they had that. We had that demo, the band.
Yep.
And there's only one difference, and that was going boom, boom when it went thunder.
Right.
That was the only difference to the demo.
Yeah, but it's one of the most iconic parts in the song. Just a very quick message to say thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos, like and leave a comment, let me know what you think of the episode and give me some suggestions on who I should interview in the future. Back to the video.
Yeah.
And
that came about afterwards.
What about playing it live? Was there ever any worry about being able to then perform it live? Because it's a tricky song to do, guitar-wise, to keep it going and singing-wise, or did it just kind of come together naturally?
Yeah, but they're such great writers. I didn't know when we did it how good it was. I really didn't. I don't think anybody did, to be honest. But it turned out absolutely fantastic, didn't it?
Yeah. And what happened? See, at the end of it back then, I mean, nowadays, if somebody's mixing the album for you, you could probably just have it sent to your phone. But back then, once the album had been mixed, how did the band go in and listen to it in a room together, or how did that go about?
That was Angus and Mal alone.
Yeah.
They always did that. After I went bang, bang, that was it for me.
But do you remember hearing the final mix of it and thinking, we've captured that perfectly?
No, that's what I mean. I didn't.
No?
For a start, I didn't hear a final mix until the album. And I heard it in the studio, of course.
Yeah.
As we were doing it. But as far as any mixing or anything concerned, that was down to Angus and Mal. Yeah. And only Angus and Mal. And the producer and engineer, of course.
Yeah. And what I loved about the tour that followed that album, Thunderstruck was the opening song. I mean, I don't know if you can get a better opening song for a concert than Thunderstruck, especially the way it was put together with the thunder coming over the speakers, and then it's of course starts with yourself just on the hi-hat before
on live. Yeah.
It was just,
actually that thunder storm was my idea,
but it just worked perfectly, and it's still one of my favourite openings to a concert. I don't think it gets better than that.
There's nobody in the world who can start with their biggest hit.
Yeah.
And then the show is still up to scratch.
Yeah. And obviously during that tour, you played the very famous Monsters of Rock festival in Moscow in 1991.
Yep.
It was, I don't know how many people was there. It's reported anything from 500,000 to 1.6 million.
I heard 1.6.
Yeah. What's your memories of getting the offer for the band getting the offer to play that gig, and what's your memories of it on the day?
It was another day at the office, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even though it was in Moscow and in Tushino Airfield, I think.
Yeah.
Which seemed to go on forever.
Yeah.
It was, literally miles and miles of people.
Yeah.
A million and a half people in a place. Everything happened. As you can imagine, you get a million and a half people together.
Yeah.
Births, deaths, and marriages,
I think I remember reading or hearing an interview with one of the guys from Pantera who decided, they played earlier in the day and decided to go to the sound booth out front to hear Metallica, but they missed half their set list by the time they got there because it took so long to actually get there.
Yeah, of course.
I know.
Yeah.
But obviously, Chris, you've played in lots of bands, lots of different musicians, different personalities, lots of egos probably to handle at times. So in your opinion...
Including my own.
In your opinion, what makes a band work? And not in terms of success, but what makes a band work with regard to the band working as a unit? Does a band need a leader? Does it need to be an equal split across the members?
You need a focal point on somebody. If Angus is the front man in AC/DC. It just needs a unit that works. You don't even have to like each other.
Yeah.
As long as the four legs of the table hold up,
Yeah. And
So
when you're playing live as well, does it maybe depends on the band, but do you play to a click track live?
No, never.
No, all feel.
Yep.
And is that the same in the recording studio? Or does it depend on the band?
No click track.
No. I like that because there's that human element that some people can't figure out why certain songs sound different from others, and I sometimes think there's a human element that can get a wee bit lost if it's too perfect almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
You've got to have that lazy backbeat in there, and if you're desperately listening for a click, I've played with clicks. I don't like it, but I play with them. I always push them, actually, if a drummer can understand that. I don't play behind the click. I try to push it like a band member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you like...
he's playing his tambourine in time sort of thing. I'll stay with that, something like that.
Do you like recording? Do you like going into the studio and creating something from nothing?
I have. Yes, I do like that. I've always liked that. And I found I loved that when I started doing this Timeline album with my band.
Yeah.
Chris Slade Timeline. And when I started recording that, I loved going in the studio. I mean, loved it. And adding things, and whether it's a melody or a violin or whatever, or a bass. I loved that process. And that was my songwriting too, if you like, because you can just add things as you go along, So
if you had to, I was going to say, if you had to pick writing and recording in the studio or playing live, if you had to pick just one or the other, which one would you pick?
I don't think they're just different things, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you have a band, you've got to give everybody a voice on that instrument, and you have to allow them in rehearsal because recording studios are very expensive.
Yeah.
So you try to rehearse first. I did some tracks on Timescape, which is our album. I did some just by going in and adding things, like some of the guys came in, we do vocals.
Right.
Or vocal backing or something. But usually it's like, okay, in rehearsals, you'd go, okay, we'll do a harmony here. We'll all do a harmony.
Yeah.
So, you try to a certain extent, but it can always be put down in the studio. So it's horses for courses, really.
Yeah.
You've got to, and as I say, it's expensive for the time in the studio. I've never, except for once, I've never done an album where I've been residential. Actually, a couple of times I did that. But so the studio is always there.
Yeah.
And you just go in whenever and say, okay, you go in, the guy goes, okay, we need a drum track on this now, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to do it now? Okay, I'll do it now. I like that spontaneity of that. And you have to do that. You have to have that spontaneity.
Yeah. I was just thinking, see when you look back at your career that you've had, what's your big break moment? What's the moment that, had it not happened, we wouldn't be sat here today talking?
I think working in a shoe shop, to be honest, when I was 15 or something.
Yeah.
And I'd heard that Tom Jones, he wasn't Tom Jones yet, he was Tommy Scott.
Right, okay.
And the Senators had sacked their drummer last night, and they wanted a drummer. And the woman had told me, said, "You're a drummer, why don't you go for it?" I go, how am I going to go for it? Although I literally lived about half a mile from Tom.
Yeah.
I'd never met him. My father knew him because he sang with my father's concert parties sometimes.
Right, okay.
And he used to come back and say, what a great singer this guy is, this Tommy Scott guy.
Yep.
And I said, no, he can't be. He can't be better than Tommy Steele, because otherwise he'd be on telly. And
He's done no bad for himself.
Say again?
He's done not too bad for himself.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the greatest natural voice ever born, to be honest, because he doesn't have a trained voice at all, although it sounds like it. He doesn't.
He still sounds good nowadays. He's still got a good voice.
Yeah, he's lost his top end now quite a bit, but he still does concerts, I know.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, Chris, we're halfway through 2025. So what is the plans for the rest of the year for yourself?
Work with Timeline.
Yep.
And try to do another album or at least a few tracks or something.
And just keep playing live as well when you can?
Oh, yes, always. Our next gig, though, isn't until October, I think, is the next one.
That's cool. Well, Chris, before we end things, I like to ask some fun questions before we finish up. So I'll ask the questions and you tell me what pops into your head. Okay? So imagine you could go back in time, anywhere in the world, big concert or small concert, I'll let you decide. What is the one concert that you wish you could have attended?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I've always wanted to be a drummer for as long as I could.
What about if I was to change the question slightly and say, if you could go back and attend one of your own gigs, at what point in your career do you think it might be fun to go and watch yourself perform live?
Oh, that would be embarrassing. Yeah, I'd like to see the film.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
And in fact, the singer, the Timeline singer, one of them, Stevie G, was at that Hammersmith concert.
Right, okay.
before we'd met. I never knew him then. So, you know, he always says, I was at that concert. Oh, yeah, right. So was I, funny enough.
Yeah. Right, next question then for you, Chris. Does the perfect album exist start to finish? And if so, what is the album?
There's no such thing, really.
Yeah.
I can look at and say Pink Floyd, you know, of course.
Yeah.
And Gilmour is just absolutely wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And what a great player. We all know that.
Yeah.
It's stating the obvious, I'm afraid.
It's the songwriting for him is just outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, next question then for you. You love the drums. You play the drums. Is there another instrument that you wish you could play?
Well, I did try classical guitar for a little while. For a few years, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't get on with it too well.
I think you're doing okay on the drums.
Say again?
I think you're doing okay on the drums.
Yeah. In fact, I still don't play a chordal instrument.
Yeah.
I rely on Mike, our keyboard player, to do that for me. I know what chords are, and I can sing in tune. I can do a sequence, you know, and he'll caught me and say, "Oh no, it's not. The second one's not right." You know, This is just me and him demoing stuff.
Yeah,
in a demo studio.
That's fine. Do you have a favourite album cover?
Cover?
It's one of those
No.
things. Think artwork is almost forgotten about nowadays, but I still love it.
Yeah. No, it's just live performance I love, to be honest. Cover, don't know. Probably again, Pink Floyd.
That's right. Chris, as you know, thousands and thousands of great songs have been written and recorded over the years by different artists. What's the one song that you wish you could have sat in the recording studio to witness the band record the song?
See, these are sort of fans' questions, if you like.
Yep.
You know, or things that fans think about.
Yeah.
I don't think musicians think about that too much. They're just interested in the next job, to be honest.
To be fair, you've played in some amount of great bands, as like you've probably been there in the studio to witness half these songs being recorded.
I've been in a few, but trying to think, bring one to mind. To be honest, no, I can't.
That's right.
Can't.
And last question for yourself. I ask everybody this question, and the answers could change every day. But for today, who is your Mount Rushmore when it comes to bands? Who's the 4 bands that you just absolutely love for yourself?
I think Led Zeppelin's got to be.
Led Zeppelin, yep.
Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. Really boring answers, but great bands. You know, Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd would be my 2 favourite.
Your 2 favourite, that's great. Chris, thank you so much for coming on today, speaking to myself, answering all my questions. Obviously, I wish you all the continued success. You've got new music that's coming out. You've got gigs in the future. So anybody that's watching can follow you on social media. They can find out what's happening. Go along, get the concert tickets, go along and support the band, support the music. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on and enjoy the rest of your day as well.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And it's there's chrisslade.com.
Yep.
And there's the Chris Slade timeline on Facebook.
Yep. There we go.
So you can check us out on there.
Thank you.
We've been together for 12 years as a band now.
Yeah.
So
That in itself is hard work, because some bands don't even last that long.
Absolutely. People say to me, the firm, it didn't go on very long. It went on for 2 years.
Yeah.
How many bands do you know that go on for longer than 2 years? But, 2 years is, I would have liked it to have been 5 years, but there you go. Yeah. I'm usually a 7-year cycle man.
Do you still cross paths with Paul Rodgers or Jimmy Page?
I see Paul now and again, very, very occasionally.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Pagey for years. We walked into the same place once, completely by surprise, and we were shocked. Both of us were shocked that we were both there. Which, it was nice, though, just to catch up with people. I'm not one of the people that keeps in with, or not even my friends, to be honest. They all complain. I never get in touch, or I don't answer their emails or something. I'm always doing something, though. Something, whatever it is.
That's fine. Well, Chris, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll maybe cross paths with you at some point down the line as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right.
And we come up to Scotland now and again.
Definitely.
So it'd be really nice to meet up, mate.
Yeah, so. I'll let Christine know.
Yeah, please do.
All right, cheers.
All the best, Ian.
Thank you.